আসসালামু আলাইকুম, আশা করি সবাই ভালো আছেন। সেন্টার ফর জাকাত ম্যানেজমেন্টের আওতাধীন জিনিয়াস স্কলারশিপ প্রোগ্রামের ক্যাপাসিটি বিল্ডিং সেশনের আজকের বিষয় হাউ টু রিড, রাইট অ্যান্ড টেক নোটস। আপনাদের সাথে আছি আমি ওবায়দুল্লাহ আল মারজুক, সিনিয়র লেকচারার, ইন্ডিপেন্ডেন্ট ইউনিভার্সিটি, বাংলাদেশ। শুরুতে একটা ডিসক্লেমার আপনাদের দিয়ে দিই। বরাবরের মতোই আমাদের আজকের এই আলোচনাটি বাংলা এবং ইংরেজি দুটো ভাষাতেই আমরা চালিয়ে নিয়ে যাব। তবে তার আগে আমাদের আজকের এই আলোচনায় তিনটি ভাগ রয়েছে, সেটা আপনাদের বলে নেওয়া প্রয়োজন। প্রথমটি হচ্ছে ক্রিটিক্যাল রিডিং, তারপর হচ্ছে ক্রিটিক্যাল রাইটিং অ্যান্ড দেন ইফেক্টিভ নোট মেকিং। আমি ইচ্ছে করেই টেকিং নোটস না বলে নোট মেকিং বলছি, বিকজ নোট মেকিং ইজ অ্যান আর্ট। তো শুরুতেই আমরা কথা বলি ইফেক্টিভ রিডিং নিয়ে। ইফেক্টিভ রিডিংয়ের চারটা দিক রয়েছে। প্রথমত, ইট হ্যাজ টু বি পারপাসফুল, দেন উই হ্যাভ টু থিঙ্ক অ্যাবাউট এফিশিয়েন্ট রিডিং, then reading can be interactive and reading is critical. প্রথমে আসি পারপাসফুল রিডিং নিয়ে। পারপাসফুল রিডিং হচ্ছে know why you are reading. We should understand the purpose of reading, the core, the objective, what we are going to achieve at the end of reading a section or a book or a text, whatever. Efficient reading holo reading selectively. You don't have to read everything. You can skim through. For example, if there is a big voluminous textbook, for example, you don't have to read all of it. You can read selective sections that is relevant to you, sections that are going to help to your decision making or essay writing or whatever. So it varies depending on your purpose or on your specific reading skill. Then comes how reading acts. As you know, reading is interactive. It's a both-way process, both-way traffic. So we have to use both two things. Construct the meaning you are getting from the text, and also use of substantial knowledge from your practical understanding or the world the world you're operating. So what you know already about the text in the field or in the language used should be really efficiently involved in reading. And finally, critical reading. It has two aspects. Reading can be superficial, like just for taking information. Or reading can be very deep, purposeful, active reading, interactive with the text, thinking about questions, evaluating claims, distinguishing facts from opinion, relating new ideas to those you already know, relating evidence to conclusions and examining how logical the arguments are. এখন আমরা জেনে নিই যে রিডিংয়ের শুরুতে আসলে আমাদের কোন কোন বিষয়গুলো নিয়ে আসলে কনসার্ন থাকা উচিত। In brief, questions we need to ask before reading. The first question, why am I reading this? What do I want to get from the text? What are my central questions? Where in the text might I find what I'm looking for? It actually makes us focused, and we are following our agenda, not that of the authors. So that really helps us to get what we want. Second question we need to understand is, what do I know about the author, the journal? Man in the text is always important. What is their expertise, what they're talking about, how authoritative they are. Third question we can ask before reading is, what do I already know and what are my views on this topic? What other texts on the topic am I familiar with? What are my views about them? And then the final question is, what type of text is this? Do I need to read all of it or just skim through or just read the first section and then leave it? And that knowledge of text type and text structure will help us to be selective and focused in our reading. Now, when we read, while reading, we have to be really critical and creative. There are 9 aspects of that. First, we have to think about what we are reading and question what the author has written. Then second, we have to remember that what the author says is not necessarily Quranic truth. It can change. You can argue, you can accept or reject the author's comment or opinion. Third is assess the credibility of the author. To what extent author's claims and arguments are making sense or corresponding to the world of facts. Number 4 is challenge the author's ideas, and that's really an essential characteristic of a reader, of an intellectual. And then distinguish between what different authors are saying, because it is very likely that authors on a topic can have different opinions, and that can be contradictory to each other. So we should be able to distinguish clearly and to evaluate the claims. And then we need to make links between what different authors are saying. Although they can have different opinions, but there might be one or two underlying assumptions or themes. So that's another aspect. And then we need to judge how the text is argued. It is the style it is presented. Second last point is the ability to evaluate how the information could be better supported. Better supported, I mean, supported by the facts or arguments, how smartly they could be present more. And then finally, look out for assumptions that have not been well argued. It is very likely that even prominent authors leave some weak links that can be improved. So no offense finding those weak links. More often, we can continue asking questions, and also reading involves questioning very precisely. So when we read side by side, we need to ask questions on the topic or while we read. The first question we can ask is about the author's agenda, what agenda the authors are having. For example, what are the authors trying to do? Are they, for example, reporting their research, reviewing other works, presenting a new thought, developing a theory, or expressing values and opinions? Is it value-laden, or is it just an opinion? Criticizing current practices or advising on future research. So this is on the author's agenda. Also, we can identify underlying aims and objectives. The abstract, introduction, and conclusion should make their purposes very clear on this. Second question we can ask is on the relevance. What are the authors saying that is relevant to what I want to find out, what I am looking for? Look for the overlap between the author's concerns and your own interest. For example, you may be looking for a model to use. So the question is whether the text provides a model. Does the text support or contradict my views? Then comes evaluating claims. Many texts and articles, they provide a lot of statements, claims. So we need to identify and evaluate the claims of a text. An argument consists of two things: a conclusion, claims are made that something is or should be, or a warrant, and a warrant. A warrant is the justification for claims. So this warrant provides evidence based on the author's research and experience, or as reported in other literature. The conclusion is valid if the evidence provided is convincing. For example, I'm going to give you a statement, and then we have to take it critically. The statement is, the Bangladesh economy is thriving. Economic growth has averaged 6.44% for the last 5 years. Now the question is, do you as a reader take this at the face value? What is the claim? And is there any clear distinction between fact and opinion? How convincing are the claims in the text? And are there more plausible conclusions? Are the claims consistent both within the text and with the other texts I know about? How certain are the authors in their claims? For example, tentative or acknowledge limitations or counter evidence. Does the data presented substantiate the claims? So by asking or shooting these questions, we understand the strength or the weakness or weak links of the statement. Actually, it should be weak links. More on evaluating claims, there are 4 questions. Is the text offering different points of view, or is the information one-sided? It is very possible that the information provided is speaking of the right or left side only. Is the subject matter discussed fully enough? Has it burgeoned in the full shape, or it just stopped in the middle? How does the author use other texts and other people's ideas? Are there any unsupported points, a point that has not grown enough? How do the conclusions relate to other similar research? So based on all this, you can make sure whether the claim has been made in the text can be accepted, or it is fact-based or not. Now the question comes on language of a text. You see, I'll give you 3 examples, and you will see how change of words affect meanings. So 3 statements go like this. The first one, climate change is accelerating because people are burning fossil fuels. The same information now framed using different words. Climate change is accelerating. A major driver is that people are burning fossil fuels. Now, in the third sentence, the same information, we are using a different word. The acceleration of climate change may be due to people burning fossil fuels. You see, the first statement is quite conclusive, while the last one, gradually, we developed some level of shandeho or tentativeness we added. So you can change different kinds of words, and the intensity of a claim can go up or down depending on the word. Phrases including examples, let's say when we say like we try to exemplify something, what type of word we use. For example, is the obvious. To illustrate, for instance, this is shown, illustrated, exemplified by. These are all used for examples. And phrases indicating warrants can be like therefore, hence, because, as a result, shows that, something like this. Whenever you see like there is clearly a link or something like that, signifying, modifying the meaning, you can take it as identifying strength of a claim. It can be like there is clearly a link. It is fairly certain that there appears to be an important link. So we understand that the claim is being supported further. Now, when we are finished reading, what sort of questions we can ask? Consider how well the text answers your questions. Do you agree with the claims made in the text? Have your initial views changed or being reinforced? Has the text raised further questions for you to consider? Has it provided you with the other references to pursue? So you can ask these questions at the end of your reading. So we are done with reading part. Now let's proceed to writing, or better you call it critical writing. Descriptive and critical writing are 2 different things. Descriptive writing tells the reader what happened and perhaps when it happened, maximum. But critical writing tells the reader why something happened and what are the consequences, what might happen next, etc. The shifting from descriptive to critical is actually one of the hardest or most vital thing in the higher education sector. You are given many assignments or essays, and these essays should be logically structured, follow a clear argument, provide a series of points of evidence, and a conclusion to answer the question. Therefore, writing is vital, and these specific considerations are to be made when you write and when you prepare for writing. So there are 4 features of critical writing. The first is a clear and confident refusal to accept the conclusions of other writers without evaluating the arguments and evidence that they provide. Second is a balanced presentation of reasons why the conclusions of other writers may be accepted or may need to be treated with caution. Number 3, a clear presentation of your own evidence and argument leading to your conclusion. And finally, a recognition of the limitations in your own evidence, argument, and conclusion. So you are actually getting involved in the academic debate. So you are joining a very worthy experience. The best way to pick up the good practice is to look at what is effective and what is not. Most importantly, what is not in what you read. For example, read like a writer and write like a reader. This helps us a lot. When we read like a writer, then we are aware of all the things I mentioned before. And when we write like a reader, then we understand the possible shortcomings in our text, in the text we produce. And academic writing to some extent is complex, formal, objective, explicit, hedged, and responsible. These are the characteristics cited by Gillette in 2009. Now I'm going to give you some conventions and some examples of right and wrong, some right approaches and the wrong approaches first, and then what can be done in a better way. The first tip is while writing, we need to explain all acronyms, jargon, and technical terms, and be aware of using them, because we need to use jargons only if it is needed. The first statement, listen carefully. Mahmoud, a highly esteemed USP specializing in HTMC, points out that. Now you see, USP, HTMC could mean anything in the world. So before you use this kind of acronyms, we need to explain it first. For example, the standard writing method should be, Mahmoud, a highly esteemed urban sociology professor, USP, specializing in high-tech media communication, HTMC, points out that. So it explains the acronyms before using them. So once you use that, you can use acronyms as many times as you like, but you have to explain it in the first presence. The next tip would be reference when necessary. Again, a statement which can be improved. It has been suggested that culture is one of the most difficult things to define. Now, we need to use a citation for that. We need someone who, let's say, some academic wrote this in a text or something. So we need to cite a reference. So how we can improve this? Say, it has been suggested that culture is one of the most difficult words in the English language to define. Lacey, 2009. So it is properly backed up, right? Third tip is, don't use colloquial language. Again, the less developed sentence first. It is important to go the extra mile, look at this, extra mile, when examining issues that have been in the spotlight in Bangladesh over the last century. So how we can improve it with more formal language. It is important to make sufficient effort when examining issues that the media has focused on focused on in Bangladesh over the last century. So we have replaced extra mile with sufficient effort. The next step would be write objectively, not subjectively. The first statement, I think it's important that theories of sociology see people as equal or and free like I do. So this is very much subjective. Now, how can we improve this to an objective expression? See, the libertarian tradition of normative theory, influenced by John Locke, sees all people as equal, free, and capable of governing. Locke, 1960. We also used a citation referring to our previous tip. So it can be improved in both ways. The next tip would be avoid writing in the first person. That's often a problem for anybody who wants to write. Let's say, how should I use the reference, like first person, second person, or third person? So let's see this sentence, how it goes. As I observe the communication styles of bilingual primary school children, I noticed the frequent use of non-verbal cues. Now, how you can take it to a third-person statement? Bilingual primary school children frequently use non-verbal cues. It gives the same message, but just avoided the first-person addressing. Right. Now, don't use the second person you as well. See the statement here. You can't understand this problem without first understanding the political power of the press barons. Now you see, you cannot understand. So how we can change it to a better phrasing? An understanding of the political power of the press barons is necessary. So we replaced second person you. Now some more. See, changing from the personal to impersonal. This is often a case of removing words that are redundant to the sentence. And I'm giving you some examples here. Let's say personal. In the essay, I will. So impersonal, we can say the essay will. Similarly, I think that, we can say arguably. In my opinion, we can say the evidence suggests that. I suggest that, you can change it to the suggestion is made that. So this is how we can change from personal to impersonal. Now the final one is like, don't use emotive language. See the sentence here. Sadly, Britain followed America down the path of what Sanders has called candy floss politics, 2009, an awful development. Now see the word sadly and awful. These are two emotive terms we added in the text. So how we can improve it? See the same message in different words. Britain followed America down the path of what Sanders has called candy floss politics, 2009, a development with many implications. So it raises questions, queries, everything is there, and you are not happy about it, clearly evident, but it is avoiding emotive words like sad or being awful, such and so. Now the structure of writing. We write many things in a university. So any written work or oral presentation should have three basic structure. The first one is introduction. Arguably, it can take 8 to 10%. And then comes the main body, the key arguments, your contribution. That is the largest lion part of your document. It can consume 75 to 80% of the text. And finally, conclusion, saying what you said, concluding on your remarks, which is like 12 to 15%. Now, the characteristics of an essay are four, to my opinion: professional, clarity, relevance, and honesty. So what is professional? We write and present the work to the highest standard. That is professional. Clarity is like using simple, effective writing without jargon and waffle. Relevance is like, sticking to the point and answer to the question that I set in the beginning. And finally, honesty, like, only we make claims that can be supported with evidence, not just something I think or, what I suppose the best or what my value structure suggests, not at all. So again, if we go by essay structure, the first one is introduction. So what are the components of introduction? What we can do in introduction? We can do several things in introduction part. We can give background information about the study. We can explain how you have interpreted the question, state the thesis of what you are going to explore. You can briefly outline of how you will deal the issues raised, each and every one. And finally, you can define any subject-specific or problematic terms. Problematic, I mean, it can be ambiguous, right? Now, the second, the largest part is the body. It has, let's say, three components. First, we need to clearly stated arguments. Make your point at the beginning of a paragraph and then support that point in the rest of the paragraph. Second is unity. In any paragraph, only write support that is relevant to the argument you made at the beginning of the paragraph. And finally, logical order. We need to make sure that our arguments follow the structure that is appropriate to the question we are answering. Start with the most important argument first, and then we can work the way down. In the conclusion part, there are four things we can actually draw. The first is, we can usually say nothing new. That's really important. In conclusion part, we cannot add any new information that has not been discussed before. But it may contain some comment on the future in terms of direction for further research. It can summarize our arguments and themes and bring them together. It can also give general conclusions and make it clear to the reader why these are important. And finally, it can relate all of this back to the title to illustrate how the question has been answered. Now, there are four essentials for essay. When we produce an essay as an assignment or to submit somewhere, we are done with all these things. Let's say we are done with introduction, body, and conclusion. But yet there are four things we need to carefully pay attention. First is proofreading or editing. Always we need to proofread and edit our work, read through it several times with adequate pause. Because when we read our work after some time, a lot of different opinions or choices of words can give you new directions. Preferably 2 to 4 hours at least between finishing your writing and starting to proofread. There are three areas to consider when you edit or proofread your essay. First is grammar. Have you made any spelling mistakes, or is your style clear enough, lucid, and appropriate? Second is logic. Our conclusions that we have drawn follow logically from our arguments. Have we supported our arguments well enough? Have we answered the question, is there any irrelevant material incorporated in the text? And then finally, plagiarism. Plagiarism means copying someone without giving credits. have we referenced all the materials we cited or we benefited from? Is there any chance that we may have copied sentences or chunks of sentences into our essay? Have we used someone else's ideas without crediting them? All these are considered as plagiarism, and it is definitely an highly neglectable and unacceptable practice. And there are several ways to check your level of plagiarism. We call it actually similarity check, and most of the universities have authorized software for this. Here we come to the last part of the lecture today, and that is note making, not note taking, because note making is an art and note taking is just a simple task we do. But in note making, we incorporate note taking, our thoughts and our comments, further thinking. That's why I call it note making. So we have to be selective first in note making. You cannot put everything. Now that we have developed technology, we can surely record a session. But then again, you don't have forever to go through the lectures or read all of the texts. So we need to be selective, whether in class or reading a text. So be selective. Pay attention, especially applicable for live classes, or even live, online or offline. So we need to pay attention as per the flow of the discussion. Where are the stresses given? This is particularly important, and that comes to the next point. That brings us to the next point. Prioritize and highlight. We need to highlight sections that are most relevant and that are most important for us to take. And then be aware of distractions. We are living in the era of disruptive technologies. So a lot of technologies are intervening the process here and there. Let's say you have a phone or you have a computer with Facebook on, WhatsApp enabled, so it can give you ding or notifications. So you need to minimize all this as much as possible, because when you lost the track of discussion, you might miss some valuable properties. Comfort is very important. That is actually the key. So if you are late for a class, hustle and bustle, you are huffing, puffing, then you cannot concentrate properly. And if you miss 5-10 minutes in the beginning, probably that is going to set the direction or tone for the whole discussion, and you missed it. So that cannot happen. So you need to allow yourself enough time to find a comfortable zone. Let's say if you are required to look at the professor just like this for the whole time, then you might have neck pain. So you better find a seat where you are comfortable, you don't have any physical discomfort, and also you are settled. So that will give you enough physical abilities to concentrate and make effective notes. When it comes to write notes, you can go for both. Depends on what type of person you are. If you are a tech-savvy person, you can go for computers, tabs, mobiles. Or if you are an old school person or you prefer writing, then you can have a pen and paper and then carry on with notes. But whatever suits you should be consistent. So you cannot just back and forth switch, because the shifting will take a lot of your hormones, and that underlying pressure will cut off your ability to take effective notes. Another important thing is using abbreviations, not using the whole thing. For example, EG, for example, or IE, that is, NB, note well, or etc., etc. dot, means and the rest, or kg for kilograms, P for page, CH dot for chapter, para dot means paragraph. So these are life-saving, time-saving abbreviations, and you can have more of this. And don't feel shy to ask questions for clarity. That's really important. You need to ask, for example, is this always the case? How representative is this? Why is this so? Do I agree with this? How is this tied in with the theory on something? So let's say you can, if you are writing on a paper using a pen, so you can probably make a section on your right-hand side or left-hand side somewhere and make a section of questions that derives from the discussion. So you can ask this question at the end of the lecture, or you can ask this question at the end of reading the text and go back and forth again and again to find the answer. Now at the end, I'm going to give you 5 useful tips for successful note-making. The first one is pick out the central question and key points as you go along. So that will help you to remain focused and not digress from the topic, and concentrate on the specific topic, take relevant notes. Second is be selective and critical of the information you read. Then again, it saves your time and energy, and also it helps you to remain on the topic and probably get the knowledge already filtered. You don't have to filter them again. And the best filtering is possible when you are in the process. Number 3 is organize your notes so that you can find the information you need systematically when you want it. If you write, for example, with smaller fonts without any paragraphs or any sections, just carrying on and on and on, then it will be very difficult for you to decipher the information. So it's better if you have, let's say, multicolored pen that you can quickly shift the color and use the notes. Take notes in different colors. So this type of hacks can really help your note making and also help your time. Further, when you finish taking notes, making notes, then you can easily decode the meaning. Number 4 is find a note-making style that suits you and be experimental. So it says like if you're using one technique for a long time, that is okay, but maybe you can improve by experimenting. But don't experiment when there is an important lecture or you are reading an important text. You can do it some other time, and if that goes well, you can definitely innovate or improvise, change your style. And finally, you can check you have complete references. This will save you a lot of time when you come to write your assignments. Let's say the professor mentioned the name of the author and the year. You can quickly take notes and Google it afterwards. Or you are reading a text and you found online, then you can definitely, and I particularly recommend that you can copy the link that gave you the access and save it somewhere along with the title, and if possible with some notes or summary at the end in a Microsoft Word document. So that really helps you to identify further or locate the article further and read again. So these are all from my part so far. So we have discussed. Now I'm going to actually conclude the session. You see, we introduced it first, and then we said what we wanted to say, and then I'm going to give you a brief of what I said. So we talked about 3 things: how to read, write, and take notes. We clarified various aspects of reading, how to improve our reading, and then how to make effective critical writing. What are the possible mistakes? How can we improve it? And then finally, how to make effective notes. What are the life-saving hacks? So that's all from me today. If you have any comment or any suggestion, you can reach me using my email address, which is marjuk@iub.edu.bd. I believe that will be given in the comment box or in the description. So please take care of yourself and enjoy your education. Thank you very much. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.